If the White Sox are intent on dealing Luis Robert Jr. before opening day, maybe they need to get involved in another potential Dylan Cease trade. I'll explain this suggestion on today's episode of Locked On White Sox.
You are Locked On White Sox, your daily Chicago White Sox podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, I'm your host, Todd Welter, a lifelong Sox fan and the set expert at SouthsideShowdown.com, part of the Fansided Network. And also I've covered Major League Baseball for outlets such as the Associated Press. And thanks for making Locked On White Sox your first listen every day. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Make sure to hit the like button on today's episode. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And also follow or subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts. Well, the Sox intention to trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day, it's not a new topic. But I read something on MLB trade rumors that caught my eye, and it got me thinking, if the Padres want an offensive upgrade and a young pitcher for Dylan Cease, why not get involved in a three-team deal to help the Sox get their desired return of two top five prospects? And I want to discuss that in the first segment. Then a recent lineup trend might give a hint at where the White Sox might be going with who is going to be the starting shortstop this season. And finally, the White Sox have a big game this Sunday. Well, the prospects do in the Spring Breakout Showcase. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. All right, so right off the bat, this is just me spitballing here. Join me for this brainstorming exercise that I'm about to conduct here. And no, I'm not suggesting the Sox trade Luis Robert Jr. to get Dylan Cease back. That's just not happening anymore. Thanks for the memories, Dylan. But, White Sox owner Jerry Reinsdorf is not going to pay Dylan Cease $200 million. For like 7 or 8 years. Hence why Dylan is gone even in the first place, because the White Sox didn't even entertain extension talks. But Dylan Cease's trade market might help the Sox accomplish the goal of trading Luis Robert Jr. before opening day. Hear me out here, folks. And, again, this isn't nothing new. I've, been discussing, Luis Robert Jr. trade rumors throughout the offseason. I had Baseball's Isn't Boring, Courtney Finicum. She was on the show discussing how she feels the Sox front office still wants to trade LRJ before opening day. 670 The Score's Lawrence Holmes also had on his personal podcast, House of L, a discussion on how he thinks the Sox should trade Luis Robert Jr. before opening day. Everydayers have heard me outline the Sox thinking in, the belief that, the Sox front office is terrified Luis Robert's going to suffer another major injury, especially since the Sox play all but 3 games. That's right, folks. They play all but 3 games, either in the Midwest or on the East Coast in April. And Luis Robert, he's even said his body does not adjust well to the cold. And if he has another significant injury, then you're in Yoan Moncada territory. However, though, it has been radio silent the past week and a half on any Robert Jr. trade rumors or even speculation. I mean, seriously, go do the Google search. And the last hit was basically, I did a show on it last week on Houston, maybe, possibly, we don't know. They might be interested. Otherwise, there is nothing right now. And the kicker is, outside of the Reds, who seemed interested but didn't want to pay the Sox ludicrous demand, the payrolls are set. Pretty much all 29 other teams have set their payrolls. So there's not like a team right now that has just that extra $15 million lying around to take on Luis Robert Jr.'s, technically relatively affordable salary to the market. Well, at least the teams that do, they've got the money probably, like the Dodgers and the Yankees, but they just don't have the need right now. So you don't really have a trade partner unless there's a major injury. Plus, the market's been clear. Luis Robert Jr. has to stay healthy in actual MLB games, not spring training games. Because, yes, he's showing that he's playing well. He hasn't gotten hurt in spring training, but that still hasn't, heated up the phone lines, because I think the market is, all the other teams are saying, we want to see that he stays healthy in actual games. Now, that's not to say maybe the Seattle Mariners wake up next week and be like, you know what, we've got great prospects to spare, and we're going to take the risk, and we're going to add Luis Robert Jr. because we think the AL West is wide open, so let's increase our chances of winning it. But outside of that, maybe the Phillies realizing they should add LRJ to keep pace with the Braves and the Mets. I just don't see a trade partner just magically emerging right now. I think a lot of contenders are going to let the first 2 months play out before they decide to make upgrades in terms of fielding upgrades. Hence why I say roll the dice, keep LRJ, pray he stays healthy, and pray this amazing spring training carries over and trade him maybe in June. However, I read a little blurb on MLB Trade Rumors and the San Diego Union Tribune on Dylan Cease's trade market, because pitching is still where some contenders still want to add before opening day. And Dylan Cease is on the final year of his deal. So the Padres I've talked about this on a past episode, that the Padres, could have affected the Garrett Crochet market. But for example, the Yankees, they need a front of the line rotation pitcher, and the Padres might want to get something back for Cease rather than lose him for potentially nothing next offseason. So that's why I'm suggesting that GM Chris Getz, why not call up Padres boss AJ Preller and try to at least work out a 3-team trade where Luis Robert Jr., maybe one of the Sox young pitchers, say Davis Martin or Jonathan Cannon, go to San Diego, and the Padres, maybe they kick in a prospect of their own, and then whoever gets Dylan Cease in the 3-team deal sends the Sox some of their top prospects for taking care of what the Padres want for Dylan Cease. And in terms of here's what the Padres want for Dylan Cease, and here's what the blurb that got me. This was on MLBTradeRumors.com. A pre-opening day trade still seems highly unlikely. Kevin Acee of the San Diego Union Tribune wrote earlier this week that the Padres were only willing to entertain trading their top starter if they received a significant offensive upgrade in the return package. They'd almost certainly want a controllable starting pitcher who could immediately replace Cease in the rotation as well. That's a difficult asking price for another team to meet, especially without impactful hitters remaining in free agency to backfill the lineup. And then here's what Acee exactly wrote in the San Diego Union Tribune. Teams have continued calling on Cease and King, but the Padres don't want to weaken what they believe is a rotation strong enough to sustain them through the season and in a postseason series. Sources inside the organization and around the league have said since before spring training began that King is virtually assured of staying. The Padres have not ruled out a trade for Cease, but sources familiar with their internal deliberations say it would happen only if it makes the Padres significantly better in at least one of their 3 spots at which they appear to have deficiencies offensively: designated hitter, catcher, and left field. And in terms of who's called, because MLB Trade Rumors basically did a summary in that blurb that I just wrote a few seconds ago, it's John Heyman who brought up that about 9 teams have called on Dylan Cease lately. It's the Cubs, the Mets, all 5 AL East teams, including the Rays, and 2 more unknown teams. So first, I will say this suggestion I'm giving, you have every right to be scared of Getz being involved in a 3-team deal involving a premium asset. So far he looks like a major loser in the Eric Fedde, Michael Kopech, Tommy Pham trade, that happened at the deadline last season. And, Eric Fedde was a very valuable asset, and he completely squandered it. And, maybe Miguel Vargas hits 25 home runs this year and mitigates it, but I think, Getz will always look like the loser in that deal for the fact that, the Cardinals got Fedde and Pham, 2 major league players, and they didn't have to give the White Sox anything. And the Dodgers, they're always going to come out as the winner in that deal because they got Kopech and Tommy Edman who will help them win the World Series. And all it cost the Dodgers was Miguel Vargas and 2 scratch-off prospects, one of which had a broken leg. So, yes, I get that you might want to be like, ooh, I don't know if I want Chris Getz in a 3-team deal, especially for his last premium asset. However, it's been well reported the Sox have an unrealistic high trade demand for Luis Robert Jr., 2 top 5 prospects. And in terms of what they were asking for the Reds, it was their 2 top prospects, basically. That's not going to happen for a small market team. But by sending LRJ to the Padres, who need the help to provide a offensive upgrade. And yes, Luis Robert Jr. is an offensive upgrade when healthy, and let them, sort out their outfield problems. Because Padre fans, if you stumble upon this, PSA, number 1, this is geared towards the White Sox audience. Okay. Number 1. So that's why I said, if you got a great center fielder, fine, you sort it out. But this podcast is meant for Sox fans, not for you. And if you don't like my suggestion, I don't care. So don't at me. I don't care. And since the Sox have plenty of pitching depth, maybe they could take a gamble on, say, giving up Davis Martin. Now, I'm not saying Davis Martin would fully replace Dylan Cease, like kind of what Acee's, suggesting, but he's a young, controllable pitcher that his kick change might, turn him into a very good starting rotation pitcher. And for those on the White Sox fan side that I'm, appealing to, I love Davis Martin, and I think he should be the opening day starter. But at the same time, he might be replaced someday in the rotation with potentially better options in Noah Schultz, Hagen Smith, and Grant Taylor. Those are 3 guys with ace stuff. You still got Sean Burke with much more upside than Davis Martin. So that's 4. And Drew Thorpe still has upside if he could just make sure his fastball is at 94, because his spin stuff is just as good, if not maybe better, than Davis Martin. You also got Jairo Uriarte, you got Nick Nastrini and Mason Adams. And let's not forget Jonathan Cannon still can be a serviceable fifth starter if you had a rotation of Schultz, Hagen Smith, Grant Taylor, and Sean Burke. Or again, it's Drew Thorpe. At some point, Davis Martin might be expendable. So that's why I'm willing to sacrifice Martin for the future if it can help the Sox get the best return possible for their last remaining viable asset in Luis Robert Jr. Plus, while Martin has been amazing in spring training, we still don't know how good he will be in the majors. So maybe the Padres they bulk at Martin, or maybe you sell them on he's trending upward. That kick change will make him a filthy pitcher out on the mound. And like I said, this is just a suggestion and a brainstorming session, okay? And a lot of this would have to be based on projection too to happen, because when it comes to the Padres end, when you do that dollar value conversion, a method ESPN's Kylie McDaniel has cited, that's kind of how teams sometimes figure out if they're getting a good deal. Fangraphs has got a section where they turn players' production into actual dollar value for that kind of exercise. Luis Robert Jr. produced just $4.2 million worth of value in 2024. That's down from $39.4 million in 2023. Davis Martin, $5.1 million. Dylan Cease, $38.1 million in 2024. So the Padres would really have to feel like they're getting the 2023 value player in Luis Robert Jr. and not the 2024 version for this to even happen. Well, one of the contributors at Southside Showdown, Zachary Caroliaw, noticed a trend in the spring training lineup that might give a hint at where the Sox might be going at shortstop. Let's discuss if Chase Meidroth is destined to be the opening day shortstop, and that's next on Locked On White Sox. March Madness is here, and FanDuel is giving you the chance to get in on the action like never before. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. That's $200 extra bucks to use on everything from buzzer beaters to Cinderella stories and even who's cutting down the nets. Got your eye on a few underdogs this year? FanDuel makes it easy to back them with spreads, totals, and game props. And I always maintain the traditional spreads, the over-unders, and money lines. They're great to play, but if you want to win big, the parlays, futures, and the props, they are the way to go. For example, I know my beloved Marquette Hoops, they're kind of struggling, but if I go with my heart for them to make the Final Four, putting $10 down on that plus 2,500 the last time I checked, that could pay out $250. With tournament games happening almost every day, there's always something exciting to bet on. The FanDuel app is simple to use, and when you win, you get paid instantly. No waiting around. So visit FanDuel.com and get on the college hoops action all tournament long. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, make sure to hit the like button on today's episode and subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox if you've not done so already. And if you can't catch the show on YouTube, Locked On White Sox is available on all major podcast platforms. So make sure to follow or subscribe on places such as Apple or Spotify. Either way, get your 30-minute fix of Chicago White Sox baseball venting with me. So obviously it was a bit surprising that Colson Montgomery got sent down to minor league camp after just returning from a back spasm problem that caused him to miss some time. And I talked about it on the show a few days ago about how, the timing was a little bit surprising. Since Colson, though, is not going to be the opening day starting shortstop, you got to wonder who will get the honor of being the starter. The past couple of games, in terms of the lineup, we might have gotten a hint into where the Sox might be headed. And it could be Chase Meidroth, who has returned after needing a few days off after a cramping issue in his legs. He returned back to the lineup on Wednesday, and he's gotten the at-bats at shortstop the past 2 games. Part of that could be, the good glove, no option of Jacob Amaya. He left Tuesday's game with a hip injury, and now he just returned. He's back in the lineup today. This also could just be a coincidence, or it could be part of a plan to see what Meidroth could do at short and give him some runway to win the job, because he's off today in terms of who is listed as being off. And I'm not even sure they're even entertaining Brooks Baldwin at short, because he's starting at second in today's spring training game against the Reds. And it feels like he's played a lot more second than shortstop this spring. But in terms of spring training games and at bats, Meidroth has 10, he's gotten 10 games, most of them at short. He's gotten a few at second. He's had 28 plate appearances. And Baldwin, when it comes to just like overall between him and Meidroth, the 2 prospects that are battling it out to make the big league roster, Baldwin has 11 games and 30 plate appearances. But again, it's more at second and coming off the bench. However, both are not showing much in terms of hitting. Baldwin's slash line is 200, 310, 280. Meidroth has a 095, 321, 143 slash line. Still the modern day Greek god of walks, in my opinion, because he's had a couple of walks, though, in the past 2 games, but he's had no hits. He's had just 2 hits in the dry Arizona air. So while spring training can always be either, underestimating or overblown, the eye test, at least for now, shows Meidroth, he's going to draw walks, but he's going to struggle to collect hits, and Baldwin's going to be in the same boat. And Jacob Amaya, well, he fields the ball. Not ideal. But the other reason why I'm tackling this is not just the trend, but James Fegan of SoxMachine.com added some context recently on the Sox Machine podcast that makes you really frustrated with how the Sox, again, address this vital position in the offseason. Basically said that it feels like the White Sox want Colson Montgomery to have the perfect spring training. Otherwise, he wasn't going to get the job. And if that's the case, why the heck, Chris Getz, did you not go out and get better veteran cover? You did that with catcher and at second and third base. Why did you not do that at shortstop? It's not like it would be crazy expensive and blow up the budget. And I'm fine, actually, with having a high standard for Colson Montgomery. Because the nice thing about this being in the early part of the build, and it's a build, not a rebuild because of how far the Sox, how low of a bottom the Sox have hit, is you can honestly go patient with your stud prospects, or you can go with give them a shot, and it really not being a terrible path either way. Because you're not expected to do anything. It's not going to impact wins and losses really mattering yet. We're not even at the point where wins and losses matter. That's like 2 years from now. So the White Sox can go patient. That's fine. They could also do, like Courtney Finicum talking about, hey, let's get these guys up right now. Who cares? That's fine too. I'm more though on the side of caution and patience, since a couple of more AAA at bats, they can never hurt, making guys like Colson Montgomery ready to not only make the big leagues, but stay in the big leagues once they come up. They can never hurt. The only ones that could really hurt maybe is pitching, because there is only so many figurative bullets in those arms. So I have no problem with developing them at the AA level and then getting them up to the majors. And then if there's still some things to be tinkered, send them back down to AAA. Or as every day, as I've heard me say, you just use AAA as more of your parking lot. If you just don't have a spot in your rotation or bullpen, then fine. Yeah, you keep them at AAA. That's the only time that, it's sort of okay to have a promising pitching prospect at AAA developing. Otherwise, AA straight to the majors, because they've only got so many pitches in those arms before those arms eventually either, deteriorate in terms of injury, or they just age over time. But for hitters, it can never hurt to get a few more at bats. It's not the end of the world. And I'm more a proponent of, once they're here, though, I want them to stay in the show. Okay, especially these guys that are potentially foundational pieces. And if the determination is like with Colson just needing more time, I'm fine. Just provide a better bridge, like with what the team has done with Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll in terms of at catcher, if they can't have spectacular spring trainings. And even with Meidroth, who might be better at second base, or even at third base in case Miguel Vargas is still traumatized Vargas. And Brian Ramos's troublesome elbow keeps him out from playing third for a while. Go get some better, go get a better bridge then, like they did with Matt Thaiss at catcher. And I'm not saying Matt Thaiss is an amazing player, but him and Corey Lee, they can manage the position in a professional manner in case Kyle Teel, who is having a darn good spring, and Edgar Carroll didn't reach the high standard of having almost the perfect spring training. They can play the position well. They'll field it all right. They'll give you some hitting, but they won't be automatic outs. That's fine. That's what I'm talking about. They'll get you basically through the first half of the season. And if Teel and Carroll are ready, well, then if you got a DFA, Thaiss, DFA him. You're not going to lose anything. You could even potentially trade him for a player to be named later, because every team needs a catcher. And Josh Rojas and Brandon Drury, they can play a professional third base or second base. Heck, I've even touched on the outfield, where they've brought in at least above replacement level defense in Michael A. Taylor and Travis Jankowski. So that's why I'm fine with that, as it should help the supposed variance, at least, not working against the team, so it can get back to at least being run-of-the-mill bad. But when Teel and Carroll and Montgomery are ready, and if Vargas suddenly hits 25 home runs, and maybe Meidroth is also showing he can put the bat to the ball and not be an automatic out, then he can easily move on from some of these guys. And heck, you might be able to leverage a few of these veterans into scratch-off prospects, or a pitching prospect with a reliever profile that can actually make the big leagues in a trade. So that's why I'm fine with it. But they did not do that at shortstop, and to the point where even Sox Machine podcast co-host Jim Margulis, he threw out, why not bring back Nicky Lopez? Now, I'm not sure if he was being tongue-in-cheek there, but he got left off the Cubs roster for Japan. Maybe he has an escape clause like Jankowski has. At least you'll know hit 240. Because, Jacob Amaya, great glove. He's got no bat at the big league level. He can't hit at the big league level. And I know it's a small sample size, but you're just not seeing it. And I mean, I don't mean to sound like a broken record, but there were relatively affordable options on the free agent market. Not ideal, but at least professionals that would have given you professional, in case of emergency, break glass play. That's, again, Matt Theis right there. In case of emergency, Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll, we had a high standard. They didn't reach it. Guess what? Break glass. He can at least play the catcher position at the big league level competently. But instead, they blindly thought Montgomery could reach a high standard despite a 214 average and a not-so-great OPS that was barely over 700 at AAA last year. And also, he's got a history of back problems. And if you throw Lenin Sosa out there, his defense is atrocious, people. I mean, he's earned a roster spot. Don't get me wrong with his bat, but you want his glove either at second or third, not short where the ball is usually hit to. Well, the White Sox have a big game on Sunday. Well, at least the prospects do in the spring breakout game against the Rockies. MLB Pipeline lists that as one of the 8 best matchups of prospects that I'll discuss next on Locked On White Sox. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. Instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals. Managing money with your partner is smoother than ever. You can track shared and personal accounts, set goals, and stay on the same page without the stress. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONMLB at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONMLB for half off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On White Sox. I'm your host, Todd Welter. Again, shout out to all the everydayers. I appreciate your loyalty. Please hit the like button on today's episode and recommend to your fellow Sox fans or baseball fans, friends, to subscribe to the YouTube channel at Locked On White Sox, wherever they get their podcasts, as this show is available on all major podcast platforms. Well, the White Sox have a good team. The prospect team they will have in the Spring Breakout Showcase. Sox highly regarded farm system will feature a stacked roster of prospects in this prospect showcase. That's on Sunday. For those watching on YouTube, I've got the tweet here from the White Sox at White Sox, going over their prospect, the Spring Breakout roster. Featured names. You're going to have guys like Mason Adams. Sean Burke is going to be on the list. You got Jairo Uriarte, Nick Nastrini, Peyton Polite, Noah Schultz, and you also got Hagen Smith and Grant Taylor. So obviously the pitchers are going to be showcased there. Edgar Carroll, Kyle Teel, and Michael Turner will be there as well. You're going to have Brooks Baldwin, William Bergolla, who's actually had a good spring training in both minor league camp and major league games. Caleb Bonemer, he's going to get a look potentially. Tim Elko, Jacob Gonzalez, Colson Montgomery, Jarrell Perez, kind of excited to see that. And then in terms of the outfielders, Braden Montgomery, he's going to be featured, and George Wolcott. So, pretty much you can see, hey, that's a pretty good glimpse into the future. And according to MLB Pipeline, it is the 5th best matchup on the schedule of these exhibition games. And here's what they wrote. Yes, the White Sox have a 6-2 advantage in top 100 prospects, but don't sleep on the Rockies farm system. Chase Dollander, number 25, is one of the best pitching prospects in baseball. And Charlie Condon was nearly the top pick in last year's draft. Second baseman Adil Amador was on the top 100 last year. And in the Athletic, Cole Carrig, a switch hitter who could play essentially any position defensively, is a good bet to leap into that tier later this season. Chicago's deep farm system brings potential of the 2 best left-handed pitchers in the minors, Noah Schultz and Hagen Smith, and a pair of elite catching prospects, Kyle Teel and Edgar Carroll. The White Sox bring plenty of pitching firepower from the right side, too, with Grant Taylor and Jairo Iriarte both touching triple digits. Switching outfielder Braden Montgomery will be especially worth watching since he did not play last year after getting drafted 12th overall, and 2021 first-rounder Colson Montgomery will look to prove why he's ready for the bigs. And then they also list Schultz possibly dueling Dolander on the mound as one of the 10 best matchups. Here's what they write. Both of these starters routinely hit 99 miles per hour with their fastballs, and it wouldn't be a surprise to see triple-digit heat in a short stint. Their secondary pitches are pretty nasty, too, and after his dominant rising fastball, Dolander's best pitch is a hard, tight slider, and he gets lefties and righties out effectively with a slower curve and a deceptive changeup. Schultz, perhaps the best lefty slider in the minors, made even more effective by an extension he gets on a 6'9" frame and a low release point. Remember, the reports out of this season is he actually grew an inch, so he's like 6'10". CHSN too, they're going to carry the game. My gosh, you own a RSN, you own one, and you decide to carry Future Hope. Brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And if you have CHSN or the MLB TV package, I mean, that's the thing, you got to have it. You're going to be able to see Schultz, hopefully Hagen Smith and Grant Taylor pitch amongst their peers. And again, you're just going to get into another peek into maybe potentially better days. And I am here for it. Well, that wraps up this edition of Locked On White Sox. Thank you for making Locked On White Sox your first listen today. For your second listen, find Locked On MLB. Baseball guru Sully brings a daily blend of humor and baseball, keeping you updated on every rumor and story throughout spring training. Find Locked On MLB on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. And I'll be back on Monday to actually go over how the Sox prospect team did in that spring breakout. Feel free to leave comments about today's discussion, suggesting maybe the Sox should initiate a 3-team deal involving Dylan Cease and Luis Robert Jr., a recent trend in the lineup suggesting where the Sox might be headed at, who's going to be the starting shortstop, and the Sox playing in one of the 8 best spring breakout showcases. You can leave them at the episode page on YouTube, X, formerly Twitter, at Todd J. Dub, or at Locked On Sox, or you can email me at lockedonwhitesox@gmail.com. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and I will see you Monday.